Today we're going to be dropping an engine on a 2004 Yamaha R1. This video will be per the manual for complete removal of the engine. Step one is to remove the cowlings first. You'll remove each of the bolts on your cowling. This one's got one missing. All of the bolts on the cowling all the way down, and then separate from inside. There are some tabs and some areas to disconnect there. Always have a place to put any parts when you're pulling them off. For my purposes, what I'll be using is one small container for all of the external bolts that are coming off of the bike before I get to the engine coming apart. So that means fairing bolts, that means mount bolts, engine mount bolts, that means any bolts that come off of the engine or off of the chassis of the motorcycle will go into that bin right away. That way you don't lose anything in the process of taking this thing apart. So next is going to be, we're going to remove the shift linkage at this nut here. Then going to remove the rear set and get that out of the way. Remove the sprocket cover. Jesus. One thing I hate is when people over torque bolts. You'll have to tug a little bit. There you go. Alright, now you can see your countershaft sprocket. So let's see. Next is lock nut, shift rod, shift arm, drive sprocket cover, sprocket nut, lock washer, drive sprocket and plate. So basically, you take off the drive sprocket. If you don't have something like this, I really recommend getting one. Drive sprocket is a 36 millimeter. I'm not using an impact socket. This is a no-no. Unfortunately, I'm out of, I can't find my other 36 mil. I don't know what's going on. So I'm gonna hope that this does the trick. Should do with no problem. So you just go ahead. Now, obviously, if you don't have something to just do that with, well, then you'll have bigger problems, but it should come off. You'll want to lock the rear wheel with a 2x4 or something like that, and a breaker bar should get it off. Alright, so once that's off, you're just going to pull the drive sprocket off, get the washer and everything off. The chain can come with it at this point. Just wiggle it back and forth and give it a tug. It'll come out, and you can then remove the sprocket. Next, you're going to remove the rider's seat, passenger seat, and then you're going to remove the tank. A little bolt on each side here. You're going to have a single bolt up on the front there, and then you should, your rear seat mounts are up under the back of the seat. This one's missing one, but it's got the other, so remove those two bolts, pop the seat right off, and then I'll show you what's up underneath there for removing the tank. To remove the front bolt and the two side bolts that hang onto these brackets here, you can then tilt the tank back, use something to prop the tank up, and that way you can get up under here with both hands and remove all of the plugs and the fuel lines from the tank. You may have some trouble. A lot of people seem to have some pretty major trouble sometimes with the fuel line itself, and if I could get you to see in there, see, you got that little you got one of these little gray spots on each side. You're going to want to squeeze those together at the same time, and then you should be able to wiggle the line off. Here we go. Remove this guy right here, and you can pull the tank right off. Connected. It's best to actually drop the tank back down and just let it rest on there while you undo the hinge bolt here. Okay, next step after you've got all of that stuff off is the reason you're going to be doing that is because you're going to be removing the exhaust system. You got to have everything out of the way to get that motor out of the way. So you're basically taking it on this exhaust. This has got an aftermarket Akrapovic exhaust, so at least up to the rear cans, which basically is all of the way off. So with that, on a stock exhaust, you're going to start in the same direction. You're going to start at the header, and you're going to remove backwards. And these pipes have a 12mm head on the bolt, on the nut. When you're loosening nut bolts, it's always good to give it a nice pop instead of trying to pull with constant pressure. You can round off the head of the bolt real easy, especially if you're using 12-point sockets. So just get it up there and give it a good whack, and that'll crack it loose. Alright, once you've got the clamp off, you basically can pull that. You can pull that out of there pretty easily on this aftermarket exhaust. Most of them are going to go together like this. With your stock exhaust, you got a little bit more to pull off in order. And with that, you're going to take off first the exhaust pipe assembly like we're taking off, and then it's going to go down into your 4-into-1 area, which is basically right around with your X-up valve. You'll need to disconnect all your X-up stuff that's on the bike if you still have this on the bike. Like I've done with all of those, box full of that stuff, I'm also boxing up all of that stuff. So keep everything organized, place for everything and everything in its little old place. Clamps for the canisters are up underneath the back seat on the clamps there. There's one on each side, back here too, right under my finger. And you'll loosen those up and you'll be able to I needed both hands to do that, and I don't have my tripod. I went ahead and released the springs and unscrewed the bolts on there, pulled the tailpipes off, and the last remaining piece on the exhaust is this bad boy right here. So you finish getting the bolt out of that, and then I'll be able to pop that bad boy out. And then I'll be clear on the bottom so I can drop the engine out when it's time. Alright, at this point, on this particular bike, I'm going to skip this part because I don't have the X-up system on it. But you're going to want to remove the muffler cover, X-up servo motor bracket, and the protector at this point. Okay, so we're staring at the airbox here to remove the airbox. You can probably leave the throttle bodies actually on the motor. But we're going to be taking the motor apart anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the throttle bodies now. Airbox in particular, you do have to remove the top of the airbox in order to take the airbox off. Remove the Phillips head screws all around the outside of the airbox. Once everything is unscrewed, you can remove some of that stuff. We can actually remove our breather as well. It's gonna come off, but now you just have to get at these little guys there and she'll come right off. Just like that. Okay. Pull that right off. Now you're gonna have some hoses and some stuff attached maybe. Nope, not on this guy's case. Pull the whole thing up and out of the way, and there you go. You're staring at your throttle bodies. Okay, if you haven't by now, it's probably a good time to drain the oil. It is here to get the engine removed, potentially taken out. I'm looking for anything that's not good in there. We did hear some knocks and stuff. Might be a little milky. See anything abnormal yet though. Get these throttle bodies out. You got quite a bit to get into and get out. A lot of the main stuff you're going to want to disconnect from the wiring harness, obviously. So main sensor plugs, you're going to ditch those, get those off of there. They are coming with the throttle bodies. On your idle adjust, just go ahead and, while you're down here now, just go ahead and remove that from there. It'll be the last thing you think of, and you'll be yanking the throttle body up and you'll be all, what's it grabbing on? You're also going to have to remove the ECU to get to the throttle cables a little bit easier. Throttle cables are down here. It's just easier to get to them if you have this bad boy out of here. So go ahead and grab yourself Allen wrench number 4 Allen wrench, and that should drop that thing out of the way, and you can get the ECU box out of there, so it's a little easier to get to the throttle cables down there. So I'm gonna start unplugging. You do the same. Yeah, I went ahead and jumped ahead and got the throttle bodies out because it's just you need 2 hands, and you can't really get a camera up in there without somebody around helping you anyway. So there's a lot of stuff you got to just disconnect. Take the ECU out. It's just easier to get down to the throttle cables when you got to get down in here underneath all of this stuff and unplug some other sensors and wires and all these hoses and all that shit. So once you've got everything disconnected from the throttle bodies, you just give them a pry after you've loosened the clamps. You'll probably have to get at the clamps from outside over here, and using a long extension. I don't know why this one was backwards, but somebody has this one going this way. These should probably be flipped around, and I'm going to look into that when I put it back together. All right, at this point you're also going to start doing some work on pulling some electrical stuff, so just go ahead and disconnect the battery, the negative terminal. So this whole cover's going to come out, this whole rubber thing here. You can fish it out of there as long as it's taken off with the proper connections on the outside. If you notice, you've got some of these buttons holding on to it. Pull those buttons out and wrap that up and out of there. You can salvage it best you can. It keeps everything clean when you're putting everything back in it and you're riding a bike down the road. Plus, you can clean everything out. It's nice. From here, though, I do have bare open holes, and whether or not I'm going to be rebuilding this engine or not, I do want to keep any debris out of those, so just stuff some paper towels in there, some shop rags or something like that, and keep debris out of them. You're going to need to take this bad boy off, and the manual recommends that you take the oil cooler off as well. Alright, now to pull that up for the air cutoff valve, it just pops up from there, and loosen that hose up prior to doing that. Get this hose off and you can pop it right up and out of the way. And then you'll want to get down and remove this clamp here and this hose, and remove those hoses and get that thing out of the way. You're going to pull out the starter. Starter motor's got a screw down there and one down there. And get to that bad boy best you can. Remove the starter motor. Okay. Next thing you want to do is disconnect the starter terminal wire. The starter wire, and just get that off of that starter. After you've disconnected those bolts down there, you can see that they are missing. Once you get this little guy out, you free up that wire, give it a little twist. And American Airways. Okay, getting some movement here. Getting a little movement. And there we go. So, you'll get that bad boy out of there. Yep, like that. There we go. Alright, next thing you're going to be getting off is the clutch cable. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And obviously, if you don't know how to take the clutch cable off at this point, and you're trying to remove the engine on your bike, call a friend, because you don't want to necessarily be doing this if you don't know what you're doing. This is Millie, everybody. Hi. Oh, you're a good girl, huh? Oh, Millie's a good dog. Millie, you're licking my ear. Good. At least you're not a mosquito, like all the other mosquitoes. Okay. Millie, you want to let me get back to work now? Can I get back to work now? You're going to be famous. You ready to be famous? She's so photogenic, huh? You ready to be famous? Is you ready to be famous? Famous dog. Alright, go. Alright, go on. The clutch cable's removed. moving on to the ground coupler. So just go ahead and grab your T-handle or whatever you need to break that bad boy out and take these ground wires off. You don't want those hanging on because those are attached to the bike and attached to all that stuff. All of the other little couplers and all of that stuff, all of these little bad boys, you know, you're gonna need to definitely trace your stator line up. It goes up and it comes up and it goes up and it goes to your regulator rectifier. So make sure that you've already pre-popped mine loose, but get that out, get that free of anything, because you definitely don't want that bad boy dragging on anything when you remove this thing. So I usually like to tuck it all the way out of any wire before I even start like thinking about taking the engine out. Now, when I get to this part, as far as being about to drop the engine out, I'm actually going to get the bike off of the lift here. I don't want to drop it here. The lift that I have to lower the engine out is a floor lift. So we'll get it down on the ground and put it back on the center stand, on the bike stand. And I have a friend actually that's going to be over here in a few minutes, so maybe he'll want to help me get that thing off. All right, we're about to drop an engine out of an R1. Engine supported with my jack, and first thing we did was pull out that top front right, whatever you want to call it, bolt per the manual. We got a little daddy long legs down there too. The next step is probably going to be the left side. Basically, I was about there. You're going to take out the right side bolt and then the left side bolt while you've got the engine supported, and then it calls to remove the lower bolt here, and that comes out from the left side from over there actually, and then you'll come over here and remove the nut from this one and then remove the bolt through that. And once you've got it all down, you can lower the engine down and pull it out. As long as you've got all your things disconnected, it should come right out. So there we go, engine on a platter.